Um, yeah, that you just talked about money, and that was my next question. About money. And, money is very important to most of us.
Yes.
And the Bible also talks a lot about money. But I find myself often caught between the verses that you just mentioned, that, money is the root of all evils.
Right.
And, you can't have two masters. And also, regarding having that kind of mentality, but also having, the prosperity gospel. And I know that that is flawed.
Right.
But then what is the right attitude towards money, and how should we view it? You mentioned that there are other valuable principles in the Bible,
right,
that can give us a more healthy perception of, or healthy notion of money and wealth.
Yes.
So I'd be very interested to hear more about that.
Yes. The Old Testament gives a more consistent and more reasonable philosophy of money. Most of the men of faith in the Old Testament were rich people, like Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, and even Job. Job suffered so much pain and suffering in his life. But the book of Job said that God gave him the double portion of what he had lost. So the teachings about money are more reasonable and acceptable in the Old Testament. But it's in the New Testament with the teachings of Jesus that Jesus introduced some radical concepts about money. Jesus himself lived a very life free of preoccupation with money. He taught the virtue of poverty. He said, "Blessed are the poor, for theirs is the kingdom of God." And he said the gospel is preached to the poor. And most of the people around Jesus were poor. We believe that Jesus himself lived a life of poverty. And teachings of the New Testament, of Paul, of James, and many of the people taught, warned against greed, warned against the love of money, and they described rich people as evil people. So in the parable of the rich man and Lazarus, the rich man went to hell just because he was a rich man. The Bible doesn't say whether he was a sinner, whether he did something awful. Jesus doesn't explain that at all. The rich man went to hell just because he was a rich man, and Lazarus went to the bosom of Abraham because he was a poor man. So teachings about money became very radical in the New Testament. And teachings about money that we have trouble with are mainly in the New Testament, not the Old Testament. The Old Testament gives, I believe, reasonable teachings about money, about wealth. God said, "I gave you the power to get wealth," or and in Proverbs or Genesis. God's perspective on honest, hardworking person's riches as being very positive. But it's in the New Testament. And the reason the New Testament and Jesus taught very radical ideas about money, I believe, are based on certain presuppositions. The first presupposition is the sense of the imminence of the kingdom of God. the imminence of the end of history. Jesus said, the end is near. The kingdom of God is near. And Paul said, the times are near. And everyone believed that the end was imminent. And when the end is imminent, you can't engage in things that presuppose ongoing time. Like Paul said, those who are married live as if you are single. Those who are rich live as you are poor, because we don't have much time. And so the sense that the end is imminent, that plays a very major role in Christians' philosophy of money. That's the first presupposition. And the second supposition is the priority of the kingdom of God over our common daily concerns. And so Jesus said, don't worry about tomorrow. Don't worry about what you're going to eat, what you're going to drink, what you're going to wear, because Heavenly God knows that you have needs of these things. But first seek the kingdom of God and His righteousness. So the priority of the kingdom of God over every other concern, not just money, but marriage, family, family obligations. Jesus said, let the dead bury the dead, and you follow me. Jesus demanded a very radical departure from our common concerns of life: money, marriage, family, possessions, and even our own reputation. And this kind of radical commitment Jesus requires of His disciples. But we have to ask, if Jesus requires this radical commitment from all Christian people, and as a pastor, I can't say that I can make these demands of my congregation. I can't tell them, don't worry about money, don't worry about your family, don't worry about marriage, just seek the kingdom of God and righteousness. I ask myself, how many people can actually put that to practice? It's almost impossible. And from the pastoral perspective, for those people who hear the gospel, who believe in Jesus, who want to be Christians, who are Christians, who want to serve God, but in a way that works for them. I can't demand things that they can't do. That just doesn't work. And that's why we have to read the Bible from that kind of reasonable perspective, how the early Christians must have lived. Apostle Paul, he collected offerings. He obviously needed money to continue his ministry, so he didn't live a life of no money and I won't worry about money and I can live without money, without help. No, he needed to be organized. He needed people, staff. He needed a budget. And so we want to approach the New Testament from the perspective of reasonable people who want to serve God in a way that will work day to day, in a way that is practical, that is reasonable. Nobody can live with no money, no cash, and just go from place to place expecting, believing that God will provide from day to day. I mean, I will respect somebody like that. I mean, I will respect somebody like that tremendously. Somebody who doesn't have a dollar in his pocket, but goes from place to place, believing that God will provide, and God will provide. God will provide. That person will not starve. God will provide. But if such a person has a family, that family will almost be at a level of beggars, having to depend on somebody's generosity from day to day. And very few people will choose to live that way. And so what I'm saying is we have to take everything with a grain of salt. That's why interpretation, right kind of interpretation, is necessary. I don't know if that answers your question, but I mean, it's a can of worms. Once you open this discussion, there are so many issues, so many issues. That's why preachers prefer to preach on the Old Testament and the New Testament when it comes to blessings, prosperity, money, family, and so forth. The New Testament, for example, it doesn't say much about marriage. Do you know that? Jesus never taught about the secrets to a happy marriage, the secrets to raising your children, secrets to biblical finance. He taught none of that. He wasn't so much interested in our middle class, suburban family life. He wasn't interested in them. But the majority of Christians today are middle class, suburban people. So we need to understand what Jesus was going to say and apply them to our situations.